My son locked himself in his room when his dad came home. The reason shattered me. It was a sentence I never imagined would become the summary of my life. Yet it replayed in my head like a broken record that refused to stop. I remember the exact moment it first happened. It was a quiet Thursday evening, the kind where the sky turned gold. Outside our apartment, windows and the smell of dinner filled the air. I was stirring a pot of lentils on the stove while humming to myself, feeling unusually calm after a long week. My 7-year-old son, Aidan, sat cross-legged on the living room rug, coloring his dinosaurs and occasionally glancing at me with his little half-smile. Everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. But safety, I learned that night, can vanish in the span of a heartbeat. The front door clicked. Aidan froze. Not paused, froze the same way a wild deer freezes at the snap of a twig. His crayon dropped from his hand and rolled across the floor. But he didn't look at it. Instead, he looked at me, wide-eyed, as if begging me for help without using a single word. My husband, Mark, stepped inside, his heavy boots hitting the floor as he muttered something under his breath about traffic. It was the kind of thing he always said when he walked in, but this time Aidan reacted in a way I'd never seen before. He scrambled to his feet, ran down the hallway, and slammed his bedroom door so hard the frame shook. Then the lock clicked sharply. I didn't know what to do at first. My spoon was still in my hand, dripping lentils onto the floor. I called his name, gently at first, then louder. Aidan, sweetheart. What happened? No answer. Just the faint rustle of him hiding behind his bed or under his desk, his usual hiding places when he didn't want to be found. Mark raised an eyebrow. What's wrong with him? He asked casually, dropping his backpack on the sofa. I don't know, I said, but something cold slid down my spine. I had never seen our son move with such fear, like he was running from something dangerous, from someone dangerous. But that didn't make sense. Mark was strict sometimes, yes. His temper flared too quickly on bad days. But he had never laid a hand on Aidan, at least not in front of me. So what was happening? That night, Aidan didn't come out, not even when his favorite dinner was on the table. He stayed locked in that room until he fell asleep. When I checked on him much later, after Mark had gone to bed, I found him curled up in the corner instead of in his bed, hugging his stuffed dinosaur so tightly the seams were stretched. The next day, I tried to get him to talk before school. He just shook his head. Daddy's loud, he whispered, eyes downcast. And I don't like loud. It wasn't much, but it was something. I brushed his hair back and kissed his forehead. You're safe, baby, I told him. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. Over the next few weeks, the pattern continued. Every time Mark came home, Aidan ran. Sometimes he locked himself in the bathroom, sometimes his closet, sometimes under his bed. And every time, the sound of the front door triggered it. No words, no context, just fear, pure fear. I tried to talk to Mark about it, but he brushed it off. He's being dramatic, he said. Kids do weird things. Stop worrying. When I insisted something was wrong, he snapped. So now I'm the bad guy? Maybe you're coddling him too much. His defensiveness only made my suspicions grow. Still, I didn't have evidence, and I didn't want to accuse the man I once trusted with my whole heart. So I watched, I listened, I waited. Then one night, everything changed. I was folding laundry in our bedroom when Aidan tiptoed inside. He didn't knock. He just slipped in and closed the door behind him. His face was pale, his eyes damp. Mom, he said softly, can I sleep with you tonight? My stomach twisted. He hadn't asked that in years. Of course, baby. What's wrong? He hesitated, chewing on his lip the way he did when he was scared. Daddy gets mad when you're at work, he whispered. He yells a lot, and sometimes he throws things. My hands froze mid-fold. What things? I asked, trying desperately to keep my voice steady. Plates, cups, my toys. His voice cracked. He says it's my fault when he's mad. I felt a surge of heat in my chest, followed by a cold wave of dread. Did he ever hurt you? I asked, barely breathing. Aidan shook his head. No, but he gets close, really close. And he says if I tell you, you'll be mad at me too. That sentence shattered something in me, not because of what Mark had done, but because my little boy believed I could ever be angry at him for telling me the truth. I wrapped him in my arms so tightly he squeaked, "Honey, I will never, ever be mad at you for telling me anything. You hear me? Never." He nodded into my shoulder, but his little body trembled. I knew what I had to do, but knowing and doing are two different things. Leaving a marriage is complicated. Leaving with a child is terrifying. But staying after hearing his words? That was no longer an option. I spent the next few days quietly making arrangements, talking to a counselor at Aiden's school, gathering documents, opening a separate bank account. I didn't want to blow up the house in a burst of rage. I wanted a clean exit, a safe exit. But fate didn't wait for me to be ready. One evening, Aiden was in the living room playing with his Lego set. I was in the kitchen cooking dinner. Mark came home early, much earlier than usual. The second the door opened, Aiden's head jerked up. He saw his father's silhouette and scrambled to his feet so fast he knocked over his Legos. He didn't even try to pick them up. Instead, he ran so fast he slipped on the hallway rug, scrambled back up, and bolted into his room. The door slammed, the lock clicked, and within seconds I heard him sobbing on the other side. Mark frowned. What's his problem now? I stepped in front of him before he could take another step. Don't, I said sharply. He looked surprised. Excuse me? Don't go to him. He's scared. Of what? He demanded. Of me? He laughed stiffly. That's ridiculous. But I didn't move. Something inside me had finally snapped in two. Place, a piece that should have been there long ago. I know, I said quietly. I know what happens when I'm not home. His face drained of color. What are you talking about? Aiden told me. He opened his mouth to deny it, but something flickered in his eyes. Something he couldn't hide fast enough. And suddenly, I saw him clearly, not the man I married. Not the man he pretended to be, but the man he had become. Angry, resentful, volatile, and dangerous in ways he didn't even recognize. You're overreacting, he snapped. The kid exaggerates everything. He's 7, I said. He shouldn't be scared in his own home. He needs discipline. He needs safety. The argument escalated quickly. He shouted, insisting I was trying to turn our son against him. I refused to back down. The louder he got, the more certain I became. And then mid-yell he grabbed a plate from the counter and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, shards flying everywhere. I then screamed from his room. In that moment, every doubt I had evaporated. I'm leaving, I said, my voice steady for the first time in months. And Aiden is coming with me. Mark stared at me, chest heaving. For a moment, I thought he might try to stop me. But whatever he saw in my face must have warned him not to. I walked to Aiden's room, knocked gently, and whispered, "It's okay, baby. It's just me." He unlocked the door instantly and threw himself into my arms. His whole body shook as he cried into my chest. "Don't leave me with him," he sobbed. "Please don't." "I won't," I whispered fiercely. "I promise." That night, we left with nothing but a backpack of essentials and Aiden's stuffed dinosaur. We drove to my sister's house across town, where she welcomed us without hesitation. Aiden slept beside me for the first time in years, safe and warm, his small hand wrapped around mine. The next morning, I filed for separation. The weeks that followed were messy, painful, and exhausting, but also strangely peaceful. Aiden slowly came back to life. The shadows under his eyes faded. He laughed again, really laughed, the way he used to when he was younger and the world still felt kind. He played with other kids at the park. He slept in his bed instead of hiding in corners. He stopped flinching at sudden noises. One evening, months later, he curled up next to me on my sister's sofa and whispered, "Mom, do we ever have to go back?" I kissed his forehead. "No, baby. We're building a new home now. A safe one. Just you and me." He smiled, small and soft, but full of something I hadn't seen in a long time, hope. The truth shattered me the day my son locked himself in his room. But what came after that? His courage to speak. My courage to walk away that rebuilt us. Not overnight, not perfectly, but slowly, beautifully, and together. And now, when I hear a front door open, there is no fear. Only peace. Only healing. Only the quiet knowledge that I chose the right thing. For him. For us. For the life we're finally free to live. In the end, what shattered me also saved me. The day my son locked himself in his room was the day I finally opened my own eyes. I had spent years convincing myself that things weren't that bad, that stress or work or temporary moods were excuses for the cracks forming in our home. But fear doesn't lie, especially when it lives in the eyes of a child. Aiden's trembling hands, his rushed footsteps, his desperate whisper asking me not to leave him behind, those moments etched themselves into my heart forever. They became the truth I could no longer ignore. Walking away from the life I had built with Mark was not simple, nor was it painless. There were nights I questioned everything, wondered whether I had failed or broken something beyond repair. But every morning, when I then woke up smiling instead of flinching, when he played without watching every doorway, when he laughed freely, I knew I had chosen the only path that mattered. His healing became proof that I had done the right thing, even when the world around me insisted on doubt and noise. Our new life is quiet in the best way. No slammed doors, no breaking plates, no small footsteps running in fear. It is full of slow mornings, gentle conversations, and the soft rebuilding of trust. Aiden holds my hand a little less tightly now, not because he needs me less, but because he finally feels safe enough to breathe on his own. And I am learning, day by day, that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, walk away, and waits for you to find the courage to listen. We left the fear behind us. We carried only love forward. And that love is what turned our broken pieces into something whole again.